Hello, this is Hilary Robertson. Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. In this episode, I'm joined by all-round musician Arturo O'Farrill, whose Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra has a new album out now called Virtual Birdland. Arturo is a Grammy Award winner, been nominated loads of times, played with just about everybody, including at Birdland, taking on the band that his father, Chico O'Farrill, founded. The 10 compositions on Virtual Birdland are culled from over 50 online concerts. John Perales from the New York Times included Virtual Birdland in his story 10 Best Quarantine Concerts Online. The Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra won the 2021 Grammy Best Latin Jazz Album for their 2020 album 4 Questions. The album features the Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra, but behind that lies the Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance, which is a non-profit which aims to promote Afro-Latin jazz through performance and education. Arturo played piano in Carla Bley's big band in the late 70s, early 80s, and has also been a soloist in groups led by Dizzy Gillespie, Steve Turre, Freddie Cole and Lester Bowie, and Wynton Marsalis and Harry Belafonte. The track you're listening to now is Anna Mashouf from Virtual Birdland. I hope you enjoy listening to that and also to our conversation.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. I can't tell you. It's brilliant.
It's actually interesting that I think in this environment, I've spoken to journalists and radio hosts and more than ever. And I think it's one of those things where we've actually been able to connect with a lot of people, which is, it's so important. So yeah, for me, this is thrilling.
Yeah, I guess ordinarily I would probably never have heard about you. Or, certainly the orchestra and what you're doing, at Birdland and all this. I'm really fascinated about the Alliance and the work that you're doing with educating. And I think that's brilliant. And I'd never have heard about that before.
Yeah, well, I don't separate art from service. And I don't, I think that an artist has an obligation to connect with community and education and culture and really see themselves in a much more three-dimensional way. Sometimes we get a bit cloistered in our thinking, and we think that as long as we sit at the piano or at the composer's table, that's the extent of our responsibility or obligation, if you will. And I found that until I started changing that mode of thinking, that I wasn't really happy as a human being. So the Alliance is as much a work of my art, part of my creative practice, as is composing a piece of music.
Wow. And I've just noticed your Grammys up on the bookshelf up there. They are so cool.
People must think that they were there before the workstation was here. So I didn't put them there. But a couple of times I was at an EDI, associates meeting yesterday, Dean for Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, and they noticed, and I realized, oh my God, people think I probably put those there just to show up. I'm like, really? No. They were there before my computer and my keyboard and my ring light were there.
That's okay. It is very cool. I think for me, Grammys are the awards that really matter. They're the ones that I think, for musicians especially,
it's good to be recognized by a peer review process that is democratic and that really has a lot of very excellent competitors. I mean, I feel very, very proud to have, and I feel particularly proud about this last one that I won in March, because it was for a recording that was very challenging, a recording that was challenging in its musically, socially, politically, the messaging with Cornel West. I mean, it really, I did not expect it to get nominated, and I certainly didn't expect it to win. It is not Latin jazz. It's not your grandfather's Latin jazz. It's really not. It's very, very, the compositions are very dense and difficult, and so I was thrilled. I was really, really happy to win that Grammy, because I didn't think it would see. And I'm really proud of their work. I'm really proud of the Cornel West piece, because it deals with the brutality and oppression, and how does it, how do a people respond to tyranny and oppression and brutality, and the question, of response. What is the right response mechanism to hatred? And
Yeah.
I think Cornell expounds beautifully on those themes, and so I'm really proud that
Yeah. And I think it is a moment in time, isn't it, that was a winner.
Yeah, there was a year for sure where we were doing a lot of reckoning with the brutality and racism and institutionalized racism in our nation, and so this record could not have come out in a better year, and it meant a lot to a lot of people. I mean, we got a lot of people who were, this record is speaking to some pain I'm feeling right now, and man, there's nothing better for a musician than to have what you do make someone else's life a little less difficult. That to me is kind of, that humbles you. That humbles one.
Yeah. Well, I think you should rightly be proud of that. So can we go right back
Sure.
to so your father, Chico O'Farrill, is a genuine legend, isn't he?
Yes. My father was a renowned composer, arranger, who is most beloved for being what I call kind of a musician of the future, because he sat firmly in the midst of many worlds and chose neither one, but chose to synthesize all of them. He was born in Cuba and very conversant with Afro-Cuban rhythms, and he was also madly in love with jazz, and so he became extraordinarily well versed in the language of jazz, and in fact, made many recordings with Count Basie, and I mean, that's about as jazz as it gets.
You're right.
And he was also dedicated kind of to modernism and classical architecture, and so he wrote many suites. He used tone rows, he used clusters, he used all kinds of advanced compositional language in his settings for jazz and Afro-Cuban music. And so that, I mean, of all, besides the fact that he was crazy genius composer, he's also somebody who kind of said yes. He said, yes, I'm here. I'm going to mix all this up. And so I think in a way that's the definition of genius for me, is someone who goes, yes, I can see the connections. I'm going to mix it all up.
Yeah, because he was born of, I mean, his parents were European, right? One Irish, one German. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, he came from Irish. Yes, his parents were essentially Irish and German, and they were people who came over to Europe from Europe in the 1700s and settled in Montserrat, and then it moved to Havana. And Havana's a really strange place. It's a lot of European blood, a lot of Chinese blood, a lot of Russian blood, a lot of enslaved people's blood. And so my father grew up in, if you've ever been to Cuba, you realize how incredible it is to live in a society that is so diverse. It's the biggest blessing that I can think of, is to not be monochromatic,
right,
homogenous, to not be, I mean, and that's so funny, because this is exactly what we're going through in the United States, that we're like, people are defining themselves as needing to be this or that, as opposed to embracing the riches of otherness. It's just amazing to me. The richness of otherness, the richness of embracing that which we do not know. To me, that's the greatest thing in life.
Absolutely. And one of the things I found talking to people for this podcast is how many musicians genuinely believe that. You know, we in the last year, I don't think I've spoken to anyone. Well, actually, there may have been one person who I kind of, when I was interviewing them, I was thinking, yeah, I'm not really sure we're on the same wavelength here. But apart from that, you know, that's 60 other people who have all, like, that's what we're striving for. We're really striving for people to be able to be who they want to be and to take their influences from lots of different places and not have to be put in a box, a particular.
You know, it's funny. I think that sometimes when we embrace otherness, we even further define our uniqueness. And then, in other words, it's like, you know, the music that I play is from Spain and the Middle East and Africa and Ireland and South America, and all these things do not confuse or dilute me. They actually make me more me than if I tried to embrace one thing. And I think that a lot of times people fear that if they embrace other cultures and other ideas, and they're going to somehow be diluted. And nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, you are more yourself in the presence of multiplicity than in the absence of it.
Absolutely.
These things don't make any sense to me, Si.
No, I know, absolutely. And when I so the idea for a podcast came first, and then I was looking around for, like, what am I going to call it? Because I always knew I wanted it to be about musicians sharing what they're good at. And then I found this Quincy Jones quote, which is, imagine what a harmonious world it would be if every person shared a little of what they're good at. And I went, well, that's it. That's exactly
harmonious
right.
World. Yeah, that's a beautiful name for a podcast, and it's really a delight to be here with you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. So we've got a bit about your background. So you've played with, I mean, I love the fact that you played with Carla Bley first. I had no idea.
I had the privilege of having my first professional experiences be with Carla Bley, and you know, at the age of, I kind of dropped out of high school and just started working professionally as a musician, and I was playing in a bar in rural upstate New York, and playing for beers, and there might have been 2 people in the entire place, and one of them happened to be Carla. So the next thing I know, Carla's partner reached out to me, and the next thing I knew, I was playing in festivals throughout Europe and Carnegie Hall. And more than that, I was experiencing up close what it is to me to see someone whose commitment to their creative practice is based on integrity, because Carla is a unique voice in the
absolutely
history of music, not just jazz. And Carla is an incredibly unique artist whose commitment and curiosity, that's something I also learned. And her curiosity is unbelievable. She's still discovered, she's 84, I think. We just premiered a piece that she wrote for us, and it's called Blue Palestine. And she based it on Macam, and like, you know, at the age of 80, most people are like, at the age of 60, most people are like resigning themselves to whatever. And Carla's still curious, and she's still turning out beautiful music. And so probably the most impactful thing in my life as an artist was to meet somebody whose commitment to their creative practice was based solely on curiosity and integrity. You know, it was a powerful lesson to learn early on in the game.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman, and I think the very fact that she spotted something in you were kind of a raw musician, and she obviously helped you to sort of hone your craft and find where you were as a musician.
I think so. I think that I could sight read, I could play the piano relatively well, but more than that, I kind of could go in so many different directions. Like, the thing that I think she saw was that, you know, I was a jazzer. I was a free jazzer. I was Latino. I could play funk and soul and gospel piano. And so she needed someone who could do all those things and kind of, because that's where she's at. She would write gospel music and free jazz and and somebody who kind of didn't see walls musically is who she needed. And so I guess she spotted that in me. And, you know, between her and Chico, I was ruined. Just between her and Chico O'Farrill, I had no, I had to come out the way I came out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's that's amazing, isn't it? So your dad had an Afro Latin band in Birdland first, is that right? And you took it over?
No, what actually started was that I mean, it's a convoluted story. I had no desire to play Latin music, no desire to play Cuban music. I was happily playing. I kind of rejected it because it was my father's music. I kind of rejected it. And I think it's good advice that young people should reject the dogma their parents give them, and whatever it is. And it wasn't until years later that I did a recording with Andy Gonzalez, and he said to me, "I'm a big fan. You should embrace your Latino roots." And I, well, what are you talking about? And he sat me down in his apartment in the Bronx and basically schooled me in Cuban and Puerto Rican music, and I fell madly in love with it, and started playing with Papo Vasquez and Dave Valentin and all kinds of people. And I was on tour with Fort Apache, and their manager said, "Well, what is your father doing?" And I said, "Well, he's getting old. He can't get arrested. He's looking out the window and waiting for the phone to ring. The jingle business is for youngsters." And he said, "Well, we can't have that." So he actually brought Chico to Fantasy Records, and he did the last 3 records, that triptych of Chico's last years. And we started working at Birdland. I guess 25 years ago, we were invited by Andy Kaufman to have a residency, and I continued that residency. My father was also, by the way, at the beginning of this triptych, this last 3 records of that captured his last years. He was also getting quite feeble, quite older, and it was terrifying to me. I'll tell you something I never talk about. As a son, it was terrifying to me to watch him increasingly age and begin to slip. And so I started taking on more and more of the responsibilities of running the band, rehearsing the band. Sometimes my father would be confused as he was conducting and miscue something, and the musicians would look, and I'd look at them and go, "Let her eye," right. And stuff like that. So it was incredible to me that we began a residency at Birdland, and I watched this unfold over many years. And I think maybe in 2001, my father died. By 2003, 2004, I had created the Afro Latin Jazz Orchestra for Jazz at Lincoln Center. And I realized that I could not actually run 2 big bands. I could barely administrate my own life, let alone 36 musicians. And so I had to let one go. And plus, I also felt like my father was not a nostalgist. He was not a replication museum orchestra guy. If he got an opportunity to write music for shampoo, for a commercial, he would write something great. He wasn't write something new. He would write something different. And so, like I said, you know what? I'm not a replication guy either. I'm not a museum orchestra guy. And so I don't want to do Chico's music. I want to expand the conversation, so it's not just Afro-Cuban, so it's Afro-Latino, so it's modern, so it's Vijay Iyer, so it's all kinds of things. And so I retired that band after, I think, 2003, 2004, and continued on with the Afro Latin Jazz Orchestra at Birdland. But in some measure or another, I have had a relationship with Birdland for 25 years. Last September would have been my 25th year of Sundays at Birdland. And, I have to say that Birdland has made an unbelievable commitment to Latin jazz, to big band Latin jazz, to the Afro Latin, Afro-Cuban jazz orchestras, Chico O'Farrill, and 25-year residencies, unheard of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just, and people have come from all over the world and been exposed to this music because of Birdland. So I'm very grateful to Birdland.
Right. So then pandemic hit in March and you went virtual instead of live. Did that happen straight away, or how did it happen?
It was a knee-jerk reaction because it hit me hard that most of the people I knew, most of my friends were freelance musicians. Hit me really, really hard that a lot of the people I knew were wait staff, food preparation, that most of the people I knew were freelance dancers, actors, performance artists. And so I kind of went, oh my God, these people are out of work. And I kind of just went nuts. And thank God I have a beautiful teaching gig at UCLA, because I wrote a big check to start a fund for freelance artists. And somehow my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful musicians agreed to start a stream to raise funds for, I mean, these folks are heroes, man. And so for the first 3 or 4 months of Virtual Birdland, they donated their time, and we raised $105,000 to give in small grants to struggle. And we didn't discriminate if they were actors or performance artists, or if they were freelance performers of any sort, we gave them grants. I remember one day I was looking at applications, and an application came from a stand-up comedian. I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy. I think it's one of the most beautiful art forms known to man. And I was just so happy that my life could be had my life reached a place where I could actually help a stand-up comic survive, and so eventually the entire Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance and all our funders was turned towards an online presence and an online platform. And so we turned we were doing concerts and touring and educating in schools, and all of that became online. We started having residencies online. We started the Virtual Birdland. All of that became an online presence. And so, after about 4 months, our funders, some of them are really, some of the most important names in foundation or private foundation giving, and individuals said, listen, take all the operating grant money that we've given you and use it to survive. And so after about 4 or 5 months, we were able to begin to pay our musicians, and still they radically underpaid for every week. They go through 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 hours of filming, filming and recording, and some of our staff are great video editing team are headed by Brian Davis, and these people work 20, 30, 40 hours a week to handcraft and lovingly assemble these streams. And so it's Herculean effort, and I'm just I'm thrilled that we can provide this.
Yeah. So then the album is a collection of 10 of the tracks taken from all of these gigs,
directly from these streams, and it's amazing. And here the humbling part of this album is that people, as soon as the pandemic hit and people started streaming, there were those who said, it's just a trick. It's a mockery of a sham. There are people who went, it doesn't have any life. And there are people who hate it still. And there are people who think it's fraud and deceptive and blah, blah, blah. I found quite the opposite. I found out the great miracle of doing the streams that somehow the vibe of the band cuts through clear as a bell. The happiness and love that we have for each other screams out from every note. And I realized that people ask, well, it's not in real time. How is it reactive, responsive to one another? That's not true at all. When we sit down to record, one person records, the drummer starts, and then the drum and the bass player starts playing that track. And so he's really literally responding in time. Then the percussionist is responding in real time, as if we were playing a gig to that track. And then I come in and I'm responding in real time. Excuse me. And I'm responding. It's Brooklyn, the People's Republic of Brooklyn, and I'm reacting in real time to that rhythm section. And then the soloists, the sections, the lead players, they're all responding in real time. So it is exactly a real performance. And people who want to dismantle that idea are just not happy, because we were able to bring about a beautiful, and here's the thing that even amazed me even more. The performance world is about two entities, giver and receiver. Whether you're in a nightclub, in an audience, in a concert hall, whatever you're doing, you are a musician giving to a receiver, and that receiver returns the gift by applauding or reacting. And here's what we found out, that is irregardless of the medium, because we look in our chats and there are people who are saying to us, thank God for this. This is the 1 hour of normalcy that I have. They're giving us. And so the receiver becomes the giver, the giver becomes the receiver, and that beautiful infinite loop that is giving, it's gift. You can't keep a gift. You can only give it away. That is the reason for the season. And we found that is very much in play, and that we're very much a part of something that even in this age is as old as time itself. And you know, it freaked me out, but the thing is real. It's hardcore. It's a little bit, you know, it's not nearly the same as sitting in a room and hearing a band play, but the result is the same. The net effect is absolutely perfectly 100% the same.
And how did you choose which 10 tracks? That must have been so hard.
Yeah, well, you know what? We got better at it. So the first few months we weren't that great at it. So those were not going to be considered. But after a while, it was also an opportunity to release music that was new. Gulab Hamon, Alafia, those are the Ana Mashouf. Those are really pieces that are new to our repertoire, are new to our audiences. And so we just saw this as an opportunity to introduce those pieces, because we have played Havana Blues 1,467 million times and recorded it. So it was an opportunity. We picked music that was new, music that was different. And we also picked music that was reassuring, and that was that you know, my aesthetic as a curator is to comfort, challenge, comfort, challenge, comfort, challenge. To bring people on a journey is the most important thing a curator can do. So we chose our repertoire based on this idea that we were going to progress the art and introduce new flavors into the discussion of Afro-Latin culture.
Yeah, and Ana Mashouf especially is a great track, isn't it?
Beautiful arrangements, beautiful arrangement. I think it's Remy LeBoeuf, or I don't know, I forget whose arrangement it is, but it's a beautiful, beautiful arrangement. And that piece came out of an experience that we could never have really replicated in real time, because it was a concert. It came from a concert that I did in Abu Dhabi with a Kuwaiti guitarist and a Kuwaiti band called Boom Diwan. And it's music that is Khaliji. It's music based on pearl diving traditions of the Khalijis. And we could only do that concert once. I mean, because it cost astronomical sums of money to take the musicians over to Abu Dhabi and perform this once in a lifetime concert. But we were able to bring it to audiences throughout the world and to release it as a piece of music because of this calamity, because of this pandemic. And man, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. To be able to play in real time, as I said, even though it wasn't synchronous, it's a real-time experience to be able to play in that setting with musicians recording. And that particular track is amazing because it involved a percussion ensemble in Kuwait, a guitarist in Abu Dhabi, a saxophonist in Madrid, a percussionist in Switzerland, a percussionist. I mean, it's stunning.
And that's Harmonious World, isn't it? All over.
That is exactly Harmonious World. You know.
Wow.
And
wow, that's
it's just and it is a beautiful, beautiful piece.
Yeah, it is. The other one, I can't pronounce it. Para los Rumberos.
Para los Rumberos is Tito Puente composition, and a deeply, deeply important piece of music, because Tito Puente, you know, a rumbero is someone who loves to party and dance. And, you know, I used to go to this, I used to hang out at a bar that had music. And what I would see, really, like, this is my understanding of it. I would see people come to dance and celebrate life and put on their finest. They would come in wearing like the best clothes they had. And during the day, they might be garbage men, sanitation workers. During the day, they might be corrections officers. During the day, they might be fast food attendants. But at night, on a certain night, they were kings and queens. They were rumberos. And for me, the lesson of conferring nobility on oneself, of being proud and joyful and demonstrating that you felt good about yourself. That's what it means to be a rumbero. And so, you know, Tito Puente wrote this piece for people who know how to get dressed to the nines, declare themselves, you know, in as happy people. That's not typical, and that's not normal. Most of us, you know, drag our feet through life, and you know, and so it's a beautiful piece. It's a beautiful celebration of Latin culture, and of just that conferring nobility on oneself. You are a rumbero if you know how to be happy.
Yeah, brilliant. So what about the future? Where have you started playing live back at Birdland, or are you going to, have you got plans?
It's been amazing. We did our first gig. Our last gig was at Birdland on March 8th, 2020. And we just did our first live gig 2 weeks ago on Saturday in a schoolyard. We got together as a band and played as part of a Brooklyn Conservatory Music Festival. And we played in front of people together. For them, musicians were crying. I got to tell you, my son, who plays trumpet in the band, was crying. We played together. We played together again as a quartet in a club here, and then as an octet. And in July, on Sundays, Afro Latin Jazz will be returning to Birdland, first as just an octet. But if things go well, and every indication is that they will, perhaps in September, the big band will be returning to Birdland, which is, you know, miraculous.
That's fantastic. I've got various trips. I'm not interested. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, sitting on a beach reading a book is great, but I've got all these trips planned to go to see, and most of it's around music and festivals and that sort of thing. And one of my things is to come to Birdland on a Sunday and hear some of this live. Honestly, I just can't wait for that. If it's next year, then fine, but it will be sometime.
I promise you that we will bring this to pass. And I'm just going to give you such a hug. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. It'll just be a thrill. You know, and it's funny because I didn't know what the response reaction would be on most everybody. That, you know, a lot of people are vaccinated, and so I just didn't know if there would be that standoffishness. But you know, people are shaking hands and hugging and crying and weeping. And you know, the first time that I played in public in a nightclub, I really lost it. I was introducing the band, and I just started bawling. It's just, you know, but then I cry easily. My wife will tell you. I cry at the draw. I cried at the overture to Lion King. So
oh, but yeah, I mean, just to be able to get back out there and just be playing again, that's what we all want to be doing. So yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
What a privilege to speak with you, and I hope Harmonious World is a huge, huge hit.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I started this episode with an extract from Anima Shoof, which you heard me talk about with Arturo. And I'm going to finish now with Para los Romperos. Just an extract from it. That was a great conversation and I really enjoyed it. Please do leave a review or contact me on social media. All the links are in the show notes. And thank you once again for joining me on Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.